he would put his body parts inside of mine. There was never a thought in my mind that he was hurting my children. Why would he do this to me if he was my dad and he loved me?
Child advocacy centers are spreading across Georgia.
I didn't know how to talk to her. I couldn't talk to her.
And the need for them has never been greater. In Cobb County alone, new cases of abuse are reported every day. Patty Agatston from the Prevention Intervention Center for Cobb County Schools said before CAC arrived on the scene, reporting the cases was often a frightening experience. She remembered one teenage girl telling her of sexual abuse by her father.
But she told me if I made the call and reported it, she would kill herself. That's a tough call to make.
What'd you do?
I made the call.
Today, she said, with the SafePath Child Advocacy Center, that call would be a lot easier.
And now I know that I have a child advocate at the Children's Advocacy Center who is going to follow that case, make the best decisions in the best interest of the child, use a multidisciplinary team, and that child's going to get on the road to healing that much faster. And that really puts our mind at ease.
What happened to the child you told me about?
You know, she came back around. She did get some help, and she actually came back and thanked me later.
It's not just a big city problem. In rural counties, the cases are just as prevalent. We won't even give you the names of this mother and daughter or their city.
My grandmothers were terminally ill with cancer, and I would be over at my mom and dad's helping out with them, and I'll take her home and we'll get her bath and things like that. So that's when he worked it out for the molestation to take place.
School counselors and even Santa Claus tipped off this mother to what had been happening.
And she was sitting in Santa Claus's lap, and she asked Santa Claus to make her dad stop lying about those things that we did, because she felt like she needed him to admit it, and he wouldn't do it.
The mother told me she didn't believe her husband had raped their daughter, but he was fondling and grooming her for later, and she blames herself for not figuring it out sooner.
Betrayed, angry, guilty. I mean, you know, the parent goes through this, I should have known. You know, why didn't I know? But, you know, through counseling and things like that, I figured, you know, found out that a lot of times we don't. They're master manipulators. They know how to get by.
He lived with me as a little...
When you talk to the professionals who deal with child abuse on a daily basis, they all have their horror stories. Nurse Karen Rapkin of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta told about a 4.5-year-old victim she had just examined.
In 4-year-old terms, she talked about her father putting his pee-pee on her pee-pee. She talked about it hurting. She talked about telling her grandma. She talked about telling her mom. She talked about nobody believing her. And she talked about crying and crying and crying.
Karen was horrified about what this little girl was saying.
She talked about how he comes into her bedroom at night, and she talked about the things that he does to her at night. She talked about how it made her feel, even at 4. She used the words nasty, and she used the words gross. She said, I feel ugly, I feel yucky.
Karen believed the little girl because no 4-year-old should know details like this. But the mother refused to believe it, so Karen took the final step.
It has had a good ending. This little girl was believed. This little girl was supported. She got the right resources. She ended up in the right place. She was removed from her home, which may seem traumatic at first, but in the end, this little girl has done very well.
Another important aspect of the CAC is law enforcement. Often the investigators are right in the same offices as the Child Advocacy Center. At least that's the way it works at SafePath.
I'll bring the mom back and the other children that may or not may be in the house, and I'll interview them and wait for you to come back.
The biggest nightmare for a child abuse investigator is not making the case.
Because you know in your heart something happened, and either you can't say 100% who did it, or you might know who did it, but you don't have enough evidence, like I said, to go forth and go through it.
But you have medical and counseling teammates to consult with. You get help most police don't get. And if you're in this kind of work, you have to care.
The kids need me. You know, I work everything from homicide down, but there's nothing I do that's as important as, number one, making sure that that child has closure. You know, it's like a death. You have to have closure on a death. If somebody dies in your family, you have to have some type of closure. That child has to have some type of closure so they can go on with their life. And part of that closure is not only getting the counseling and everything else that they need, but that person who's done this to them, knowing that we did everything we could possibly do to make them pay for the crime that they committed against them. And as I am that child advocate, okay, and they need me. That's why I do it, because they need me.
If things go wrong, you can bet DFACS will get some bad headlines. But if they go right, DFACS deserves some good press. In Cobb County, DFACS is an integral part of the CAC.
We work together with the Advocacy Center, with our law enforcement. We've kind of got a history of doing that, working in multidisciplinary manner to where we kind of work all together on these cases, and I think that's what helps us be successful.
And who is it okay to get hugs from? Who's a safe person?
Grandma, your parents.
Prosecution of these cases is more successful in counties that have a child advocacy centers.
There's a study from 2004 which has shown that in CAC communities, or those communities that have a child advocacy center, that more perpetrators pled guilty or were convicted than in those communities that did not have the CAC model to follow. And to me, that's the most telling, or the most telling thing, or the most successful component of the CACs.
And now a new partnership with the CACs and Kennesaw State University.
The goal, of course, of this partnership is to create a center for excellence, whereby we can take the best practices that occur in the area and benefit from those that come from the children's advocacy side and those that come from the university side, and meld them together so that we get the very best of possibilities.
And from Kennesaw University, some great future employees of CACs everywhere.
We have our human services major, which prepares students to do this kind of work and other types as well. We have over 200 students in that major right now. We also have a new Masters of Social Work program that's quite successful.
Remember, your body is special.
A couple of years ago, the CAC of Georgia was in its infancy at a place called SafePath, and SafePath has become the standard for CACs in Georgia and elsewhere.
We now have had visitors as far away as New York. Hinesville, Florida came to visit us, started their own advocacy center. We've had the prosecutor from Japan come and visit us to look at our multidisciplinary team and how to set up an advocacy center in your area.
The Georgia director of CAC, Cynthia Howell, says all of this attention is helping to advance the goal to provide more centers for the 5,800 victims in our state every year, so that no one has to travel more than an hour to get help.
Our vision is that when abuse is reported, every child in Georgia will have access to the services provided by a Children's Advocacy Center. Now, Children's Advocacy Center is important because it uses a multidisciplinary approach to the investigation, intervention, and treatment of a child. The multidisciplinary approach is so very, very vital. When they are working together with the same information, then they are able to make the best possible decisions on behalf of a child.
Cynthia Howell said the partnership with Kennesaw State University is just another piece of the puzzle that will enable Georgia to be a leader in dealing with child abuse.
And if someone tells you that their touch is our secret,
we know it's a problem we can't cure, but working together, we certainly can do a better job of managing it.
there are lots